So today I am performing my speech in front of my nieces, Lillian and Tegan, and my best friend, sister Renee. Okay, this is my persuasive speech, and this is Leo. Okay, 25% of teens in the US have mental health disorder. That's a quarter of the teenage population. We have a growing mental health crisis on our hands. Many young adults are struggling with mental illness and how to process the hostility and changes in our country and society, and that impact is certainly also felt by children. I am passionate about mental health and early intervention because I struggled with depression my whole life, starting at as young as 5 or 6. And I had very little resources to unpack and understand my brain and how to cope and heal. Instead, I developed unhealthy coping skills and negative core beliefs that only escalated into crisis level and led me to struggle in high school and drop out of college at 18 with little understanding or intervention from both education organizations. I would have greatly benefited from early intervention and therapy. It may have put me on a different path. I will be persuading you that we need our national health education system to prioritize mental health and prevention by funding mandatory mental health and therapy programs in elementary school. We will talk about how young children don't naturally know how to healthfully process difficult emotions. Our schools don't have enough staff and resources to deal with the growing need for mental health care in schools, and our government needs to step in and fund a program for our youngest school kids, even with the growing need for educational funding in other areas. Kids are born with 8 primary emotions: anger, sadness, fear, joy, interest, surprise, disgust, and shame. While we have natural emotional reactions born with us, like crying, frustration, hunger, and pain, other emotional reactions are impacted by experience. When we teach kids to identify emotions, we give them the framework to help them explain, understand, and deal with them in an appropriate way. How we react to our kids' emotions has direct impact on their emotional intelligence. Often kids who act out are punished in school, although these attention-seeking behaviors can be a cry for help, often are a sign of loneliness, exhaustion, overstimulation, trauma, or neglect. They can't vocalize emotions and their inside emotions and outside issues, so they act out. We must meet them with empathy instead of bad consequences. Learning to self-soothe is just as important as school subjects. These kids who get in trouble for these attention-seeking behaviors get misunderstood and stuck in a cycle. Teachers are overworked, underpaid, and not enough mental health resources or time to dissect every situation. And they must remove disruptions because they have to get through lessons with larger classroom populations. When students get this kind of negative response, they are afraid to reach out to other adults for help. Another reason kids can't get their general negative uniform consequences at school is because there's not enough staff or resources for school counseling. There are school counselors who teach about a basic understanding of mental health, however, only 1 or a few per school, and they can't take on the weight of this growing burden. Instead of occasional class visits by one counselor, schools ideally need to grow their counseling department through national funding, of course, and build a mental health and counseling course with a catchier name, centered around understanding and no judgment, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, self-soothing and meditative practices, and coping skills. This should be mandatory, just like math. Emotional intelligence exists and is just as important as regular intelligence, and it will impact who the kids grow up to be. This should not all fall on the teacher to squeeze in. This needs to be its own course. Schools don't have room in their budgets for an additional department and mental health curriculum, or even a smaller version of that. Money for this addition needs for schools at elementary level alone would need a big push from government funds to back it up. More bills will need to be passed. I am aware that schools need funding for other things that are not mental health related. There are many people with varying opinions as to where education funds should go. like materials, teacher salaries, more staff, and some argue that that has to happen first over mental health care. Now, we should know that young kids don't always automatically know how to healthily process emotion. There are little financial resources for mental health care prevention in schools, and we need our government to step in and fund more intricate and mandatory mental health programs at the elementary level. We also know that while this is important, schools need funding in other non-mental health related areas as well. Some argue before all else. Something you can do is sign a petition included below, created by Selena Gomez from change.org, that helps mitigate mental health crisis by demanding funding for more mental health services in schools. You can also become a mental health advocate through NAMI, which helps keep you up to date on state and federal advocacy bills. Remember that today's children are tomorrow's leaders, and if we set them up for success and emotional stability and empathy, they can make a positive impact on our future generations. Thank you.
Yay!